Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The sound of a zipper tearing through the silence of the locker room was louder than a gunshot, and infinitely more dangerous. You really thought you could just walk away from me? Kalen whispered, his voice a low, vibrating purr that usually sent shivers of fear down the spines of the elite student body. He had Julian pinned against the cold, metal lockers, his manicured hand gripping Julian's collar with a strength that betrayed his refined, angelic appearance. Kalen, the crown prince of St. Sterling University, the alpha of alphas, was used to getting what he wanted. And right now, he wanted to humiliate the quiet, scholarship transfer student who had committed the cardinal sin of ignoring him. Kalen's eyes, burning with the golden hue of an agitated alpha, dropped to Julian's waist. He intended to strip the boy, to expose his mediocrity to the world, to prove that a beta was nothing more than background noise. But when his fingers brushed the waistband of Julian's trousers, dragging the fabric down in a cruel, sharp motion, the smirk froze on his beautiful, cruel face. The air in the room didn't just shift, it shattered. Julian Vane had spent 3 years mastering the art of invisibility. In a world governed by the archaic, biological hierarchy of the alpha, beta, and omega dynamics, being a beta was the safest camouflage. Betas were the worker bees, functional, necessary, and entirely ignored by the predators at the top of the food chain. St. Sterling University was a microcosm of this brutal society. Here, the sons of senators and CEOs postured for dominance, their pheromones a constant, suffocating fog in the hallways. Julian, with his nondescript brown hair, his thick-rimmed glasses that obscured his eyes, and his scent blockers that simulated the dull, cardboard aroma of a beta, was supposed to be a ghost. He was on a mission. A private investigation into the embezzlement of university funds that led back to the powerful Thorne family, Kalen Thorne's family. The plan was simple: observe, collect data, graduate, and hand the evidence to the client. He hadn't accounted for Kalen Thorne being a bored, sadistic brat with a god complex. For months, Julian had endured the petty microaggressions common to the scholarship tier. He'd had his books knocked from his hands, his table in the cafeteria reserved after he'd already sat down, and his lab experiments sabotaged. He took it all with the stoic resignation of a true beta. But Kalen was different. Kalen was an apex predator who sensed something wrong with the prey. It started in the library. Julian had been deciphering a ledger, his focus absolute. Kalen had approached, flanked by his sycophantic entourage, expecting Julian to vacate the prime window seat. Julian hadn't even looked up. He simply turned the page. That small act of defiance had sparked an obsession in Kalen. The campus heartthrob, with his platinum hair and ice-blue eyes, couldn't fathom a world where he wasn't the center of gravity. He began to stalk Julian, not with romantic intent, but with the intent to break him. He wanted to see the beta crack. He wanted tears, begging, submission. It all culminated in the varsity locker rooms after hours. Julian was cleaning up after a late shift as the team manager, another invisible role he played to perfection, when Kalen cornered him. "You're mute." Kalen had sneered, stepping into Julian's personal space. The scent of burnt sugar and ozone, Kalen's pheromones, was aggressive, designed to force submission. Julian had remained impassive, adjusting his glasses. "I have work to do, Thorne." "Move." "Thorne." Kalen laughed, a sharp, jagged sound. "No one calls me Thorne. It's Sir, or Alpha. I'm a beta, Kalen. Your biological imperative doesn't work on me." Julian lied smoothly. That was the trigger. Kalen had slammed him against the lockers, the metal rattling with the force of the impact. "Let's see." Kalen hissed, his hand moving to Julian's belt. "Let's see just how average you really are. Let's strip you down and show everyone that beneath these cheap clothes, you're just nothing." It was a power play, a violation. In the logic of the elite, stripping the lower caste was a way to remind them of their vulnerability. But as the fabric gave way, and Kalen looked down, the dynamic in the room inverted so violently it caused physical dizziness. Julian wasn't average. The first thing Kalen saw was the scarring. Jagged, pale lines ran down hips that were far more muscular than Julian's baggy clothes suggested. But it wasn't the scars that stopped Kalen's heart. It was the anatomy. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Kalen's blue eyes widened, pupils blowing wide in a mix of shock and an instinctual, biological terror he had never felt before. He looked from the exposed skin back up to Julian's face. Bigger, Kalen breathed, the words slipping out before he could stop it. He wasn't just talking about size. In the language of their world, physical endowment was often correlated with pheromonal potency. What Kalen was staring at was the biological marker of a prime, something far beyond a standard alpha. Julian sighed. It was a sound of profound disappointment. You really are a spoiled child, Julian said. His voice had changed. The flat, nasal tone of the beta was gone, replaced by a baritone so deep it resonated in Kalen's chest cavity. Julian reached up and took off his glasses. He folded them neatly and placed them on the shelf behind him. When he looked back at Kalen, his eyes were no longer a dull mud brown. They were dark, predatory obsidian, swirling with flecks of crimson. You pushed until you found the monster, Kalen. Are you happy now? Kalen tried to step back, his instincts screaming at him to flee, to bare his neck, to submit. But his legs wouldn't move. He was frozen by the sheer weight of the aura suddenly flooding the room. Julian didn't just smell like a beta anymore. The scent blockers had been mentally overridden by the surge of his temper. The air filled with the scent of deep cedar, rain-soaked earth, and the metallic tang of blood. It was the scent of an enigma, a rare, mythical designation believed to be extinct. Enigmas didn't just dominate omegas, they dominated alphas. Kalen stammered, his arrogance evaporating like mist. I'm the man who's going to teach you a lesson, Julian growled. Julian moved. He didn't shove Kalen. He merely stepped forward, and Kalen retreated until his own back hit the lockers on the opposite side. The hunter had become the prey in the span of a heartbeat. You wanted to see? Julian asked, his voice low and dangerous. He leaned in, trapping Kalen with his arms on either side of the blonde's head. You wanted to expose me? Go ahead. Scream. Call your friends. Tell them the scholarship student is an enigma. Kalen trembled. It was a physiological reaction he couldn't control. His alpha biology recognized a superior predator. But beneath the fear, there was something else. A spark. A heat igniting in his belly that he had never experienced. Kalen had slept with omegas, had toyed with betas, but he had never felt small. He had never felt protected. He had never felt overpowered. And God help him, he liked it. I won't tell, Kalen whispered, his voice shaking. No. Julian tilted his head, his dark eyes scanning Kalen's flushed face. Why not? You live to ruin lives, don't you? Because, Kalen gasped as Julian's hand moved to Kalen's throat, thumb pressing against his pulse point. Because I want to know why you're hiding. Julian paused. This was the complication. He should intimidate the boy into silence and leave. But the pulse fluttering under his thumb was erratic, frantic, and enticing. Curiosity killed the cat. Kalen. I'm not a cat. Kalen managed to bite back, a flash of his old spirit returning. I'm a wolf. You're a puppy, Julian corrected effortlessly. Barking at a thunderstorm. Julian stepped back, pulling his clothes together with agonizing slowness. He didn't rush to cover himself out of shame. He did it with the casual indifference of someone who knew exactly what they possessed. Kalen couldn't tear his eyes away. This never happened, Julian said, his voice returning to the flatter, more neutral tone, though the command within it was absolute. You will go back to your dorm. You will forget you saw anything other than a pathetic beta. And you will never cross my path again. Do you understand? Kalen nodded, mute. But as Julian turned to leave the locker room, Kalen spoke. You can't hide forever. Julian paused at the door. Watch me. The days that followed were a torture of Kalen's own making. He tried to obey the command. He tried to ignore the scholarship student sitting in the back of the lecture hall. But now, every time he looked at Julian, he didn't see the drab sweater vest or the messy hair. He saw the muscles tensing underneath. He saw the obsidian eyes hidden behind the glass lenses. He remembered the scent of rain and earth that had made his knees weak. Kalen Thorne, the campus prince, was unraveling. His grades slipped. He snapped at his friends. He broke up with his current Omega flavor of the month because their scent was too sweet, too cloying compared to the dark, masculine richness of Julian. He needed to know the truth. Why would an enigma, a being who could rule the world, who could have any CEO or politician bowing at his feet, pretend to be a nobody? Kalen began his own investigation. He used his family's connections to dig into Julian Vane's background. The file was clean. Too clean. Fabricated. He found the crack in the armor 2 weeks later. A late-night gala hosted by the university for the donors. The Thorne family was there in full force. Kalen stood by his father, a ruthless man who viewed his son as a breeding mare for the next generation of legacy alphas. "Stand up straight," his father hissed, gripping Kalen's elbow hard enough to bruise. "Senator Voss is watching. You will dance with his daughter, and you will be charming." "She's vapid, father," Kalen muttered. "She's rich. Do as you're told." Kalen felt the familiar suffocation, the tightening of the golden cage he lived in. He walked toward the balcony for air, loosening his tie. And there, in the shadows of the terrace, dressed in a waiter's uniform, was Julian. He was working the event. Of course. Kalen approached him, the moonlight catching the silver embroidery of his expensive suit. "Fetching drinks for the people you could enslave with a single command? It's perverse, Vane." Julian didn't flinch. He poured champagne into a flute with steady hands. "I'm earning a living. Something you wouldn't understand. I know you're investigating us." Kalen dropped the bomb casually, leaning against the stone balustrade. Julian set the bottle down. The air around them grew heavy instantly. "Is that so? My father's accounts. You're looking for the offshore transfers." Kalen took a sip of the champagne Julian had just poured. "I can help you." Julian finally looked at him. Really looked at him. "Why would you betray your own pack?" Kalen's smile was bitter, fragile. "Because they eat their young. My father. He plans to sell me off. Arranged marriage. To merge corporations. I'm just a commodity to him. An alpha stud horse." Julian studied the younger man. He saw the cracks in the porcelain mask. He saw the desperation. "And what do you want in return?" Julian asked. Kalen stepped closer. The attraction was magnetic, undeniable. "I want you to ruin him. And then, I want you to take me." "Take you?" Julian raised an eyebrow. "I'm tired of being the alpha, Julian," Kalen confessed, the words rushing out in a whisper. "I'm tired of posturing. I'm tired of pretending I'm hard and cruel. I saw what you are. I felt it. My biology. It didn't reject you. It called to you. It was a biological anomaly. Usually, two dominant dynamics would kill each other. But an enigma could pair with anyone. And Kalen, for all his bluster, was a submissive alpha, a rarity that was shamed in their society. He had been overcompensating his entire life. Julian reached out, his hand cupping Kalen's jaw. His thumb traced the sharp bone structure. "You're playing a dangerous game, little wolf. If I take you, I don't give back. I possess. I know." Kalen leaned into the touch, his eyes fluttering shut. "I saw. Bigger. Better. Stronger. If we do this," Julian murmured, stepping into Kalen's space, shielding him from the view of the party inside. "You are mine. You follow my orders. You help me bring down your father's empire, and you walk away with nothing but the clothes on your back and my mark on your neck. Can you handle that?" Kalen opened his eyes. The ice blue collided with the hidden obsidian. "I'd burn this whole university down just to feel your hands on me again." The deal was sealed not with a handshake, but with a kiss that tasted of champagne and revolution. It was rough, demanding, and searingly hot. Julian didn't hold back this time. He kissed Kalen with the hunger of a man who had been starving himself, his tongue claiming Kalen's mouth, his pheromones wrapping around the younger man like a possessive blanket. Kalen melted. He gripped Julian's waiter vest, anchoring himself as his world spun. The takedown took 3 months. With Kalen's inside access and Julian's forensic skills, they dismantled the Thorne family's legacy of corruption. It was a slow burn of espionage, stolen glances in the library, and secret meetings in the dead of night that often devolved into frantic, desperate intimacy. Julian taught Kalen that submission wasn't weakness, it was trust. In the safety of Julian's off-campus apartment, Kalen shed the armor of the cruel prince. He learned to let go. He learned that he didn't have to be in charge to be worthy. And Julian, the solitary soldier, learned that even monsters need a home. Kalen wasn't just a spoiled brat. He was sharp, witty, and fiercely loyal once his trust was earned. The climax came during graduation week. The police arrived at the Thorn estate at dawn. Kalen stood on the driveway, watching his father being led away in handcuffs. The older man screamed threats, disowning his son, cursing him to hell. Kalen stood tall, his hand interlocked with Julian's. He didn't flinch. "You're nothing without me," his father roared. "You're a traitor, a weakling." Kalen looked up at Julian. Julian, who had shed the disguise, wearing a tailored black suit that accentuated his powerful frame, the aura of the enigma radiating off him in waves that silenced the press and the police alike. "I'm not nothing," Kalen said softly, though only Julian could hear. "I'm his." The scandal rocked the university. The Thorn empire crumbled. But from the ashes, a new hierarchy emerged. Julian Vane didn't disappear after the job was done. He stayed. He took over the assets that Kalen managed to salvage legally. He became the new power behind the throne. And Kalen? Kalen returned to finish his degree. He was still beautiful, still sharp-tongued, still the campus heartthrob. But the cruelty was gone. He walked with a different kind of confidence now, the confidence of someone who is loved by the most dangerous creature in the jungle. Rumors flew, of course. Why was the fallen prince always seen with the mysterious businessman who used to be a scholarship student? Why did Kalen Thorn, the untamable alpha, wear high-collared shirts that barely concealed the dark, possessive bruising on his neck? One afternoon, in the same locker room where it had all begun, a group of freshman alphas were gossiping. "I heard Thorn went soft," one sneered. "I bet I could take him now." Kalen turned the corner, his gym bag over his shoulder. He stopped, eyeing the freshman. The boy flinched, expecting a verbal lashing. Instead, Kalen just smiled. A slow, terrifying smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You think you can take me?" Kalen asked, amused. "Yeah," the freshman puffed up. Kalen laughed. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Take a deeper look, kid. I belong to a monster. And if you touch me, well, let's just say he's very protective. And he's much, much bigger than you." From the doorway, a shadow lengthened. Julian leaned against the frame, arms crossed, his dark eyes fixed on the freshman with predatory stillness. "Ready to go, Kalen?" Julian asked, his voice vibrating through the room. The freshman paled, backing away so fast he tripped over a bench. Kalen walked over to Julian, slipping his hand into the larger man's palm. He looked up, adoration and mischief warring in his gaze. "Ready, sir." And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Julian take absolute control, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a family that treated you like a commodity, or would you burn it all down for love? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.